So we have a really exciting panel coming up for you. It's called Hollywood and Health. All of your hours of binge watching television have finally paid off. We're going to kick it off with a little video, so let's roll it.
Tracy, you are going to die.
What? No!
You have no reflexes, your blood tastes like root beer, and some of your bones appear to have vanished.
Is it a brain tumor?
Infection, lupus.
I suffer from exercise-induced asthma.
My friend here was taking down our Christmas lights and she fell off the balcony and may have broken her foot or ankle or something.
My God, you still have your Christmas lights up?
I feel a headache coming on. I've got a headache.
My therapist says it's a compulsion.
I just got my period.
I'm late.
It's your own fault. You should plan your outfits a week in advance like I do.
Not that kind of late, Dre. I'm late.
I'm pregnant.
You're pregnant?
You're pregnant?
I'm a little pressed for time, too. I have cancer.
Lung cancer. Inoperable.
Your mother did have what looks like an aneurysm.
I'm not a nymphomaniac. I'm a compulsive liar.
Bipolar disease like our mom.
My mom's convinced it was anorexia.
I have AIDS.
You're HIV positive.
Give her the shot! You understand? You're going to behave. Give my daughter the shot!
Thank you very much.
You had a seizure. Your vitals have been stable and you didn't drop your sats. We're gonna take you for a head CT.
Let me see what we have here.
You have poison oak.
When nobody wants to have poison oak. Mind if I ask how exactly this happened?
I slept with Mark.
And he had poison oak on him?
No, I slept with Mark a year ago, and apparently this is what I get.
All right, let's get the panelists out here. First up, we have Sara Vilkomerson. She is a senior writer at Entertainment Weekly. She also has a SiriusXM radio show called Women in Pop about women in pop culture. Sara, come on up. Woo! Next up, we have a good friend of mine who played a doctor on television for 7 years, which means she could probably perform surgery on you if you have no other options at all, and I mean at all. Please welcome Kate Walsh. Hi. Yeah. And finally, we have our moderator, Kaja Perina, and she is the editor-in-chief of Psychology Today.
Thrilled to be here with you, ladies.
I'm super thrilled.
Me too.
Are you guys thrilled? How are you doing? Are you still awake? Have some coffee.
Woo! I got to get this onto the table. I have a confession to make. I grew up in Europe, so ask me about ABBA, ask me about Ricola, throat lozenges, which I've been using, but not so up on television. I watched two things, 60 Minutes and QVC. It's fair. Okay. But seriously, what have I been missing? Can you tell me a moment or a character for both of you that changed the way you thought about a health condition and that stays with you even today?
Well, I was talking about this at work. All I do at work is talk about television. But I remember very clearly watching ER, which I was a huge fan of, and there was a traumatic episode where a woman died of preeclampsia, which then became something I was obsessed with, from a very young age, and why.
As we all are.
Yes, and poor Dr. Green, and all the rest of it. But it's funny when you have a moment, and Grey's Anatomy and Private Practice had this too, where you become so attached to these characters that you then internalize their suffering and pain as your own.
Yeah. I certainly, that's so great. That's so interesting. I mean, for me, I learned so much that was just reserved for a specific part of my brain for medical that would go in and then go right out when the new episode came because there was so much information. But I will say, but also just that it was such a proud, obviously, to be a part of Shondaland, but to be a part of Grey's and Private Practice, to be able to bring up health issues in storylines and political issues and gender issues and all sorts of issues in good story, making it hearable and digestible and hopefully enjoyable or moving in the very least to segments of the population that you may not ever reach, wanting to talk about issues of women's choice, health, abortion rights or gender issues, sexual assault. So that was, for me to be able to be in a program like that, and have a great role to play as, you know, as an actress as well, and work with such great talent was seminal. And I think when, you know, Grey's became such a cultural thing that, and we're just talking that kids are watching it now still on the internet. It's been incredible. Like people have come up to me, little kids that are now in their 30s, or say, I went to medical school because I watched Grey's Anatomy, you know, or whatever. You know.
What is it about? So what is it about medicine, medical shows, that is such a vehicle for all of these issues, including the ones we're talking about here today?
Well, it makes for good soap opera. It's life and death. It's contained. I think it's the uniforms too. White coats. We're usually running. There's always a surgery and some making out. There's
elevators.
Yeah.
Oh, the elevators.
All the elevators.
True to life.
Closets.
I have a question for Kate, actually. When you're learning about this as an actress, how's your hypochondria level when you're learning about all of these medical issues? Because as a viewer, you're sometimes like, I think I have that.
It's almost like the worst of it's the worst of non-medical school, because at least in medical school you learn everything, but now it's like you only learn the horror stories.
So, so like when you were learning things, did you start being like, maybe?
No, I actually had the antithesis of that. I was someone who just never went to the doctor, and still was like, oh really? Do I have to? I would go to get my annual OBGYN checkup, but I didn't. I just was so in it, and I just didn't. And I don't know. I just never thought that way. You don't think that way until you actually get health issues, and then you're, which did happen also the last couple of years, you're like, oh, now I'm like, I have a circuit of doctors that I feel like we should just all dine together once a week. Yeah.
Sara, top three, physicians or patients, top three characters who you think have galvanized conversations?
For me growing up, it was ER. That was a big one. And then I got the chicken pox in my 30s, which put me out, and I watched all of House. And I think Dr. House, now I feel like I can recognize lupus in someone from watching House. And then for me, I was obsessed with Grey's Anatomy. I mean, I cried probably every episode I watched of that show. I think, you know, especially with these long-running series, every week you have new characters and new faces and ideas. So it's not, you know, it's a tangible thing. It's no longer abstract when you are meeting a character and you're learning about whether it's health or sexual assault or, you know, cancer. It becomes much more individual.
Well, and that's where the storytelling element comes in. It is so crucial, right? I think of storytelling as successful storytelling in any genre, in print certainly, and in your world, as giving people medicine wrapped in candy, sort of like Ricola, actually. By the way, I'm not being paid to say any of that. I'm just have a throat thing today. So it's like medicine wrapped in candy. It's like ideas wrapped in emotion. And I think any show that does that successfully. And I think that's one of many reasons that 13 Reasons has broken through in such a huge way. Can you talk about the crafting of the storyline, how privy you were to the writers, to writers' discussions about some of these issues, and the perspective switching?
Yeah. I feel very fortunate both with Shonda Rhimes and Brian Yorkey, who adapted Jay Asher's novel in the first season of 13 Reasons Why, in that, Brian Yorkey's a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, and Shonda Rhimes is, well, we know, she's Shonda.
Rhimes. Yeah.
So I was in very good hands. So even if I would pitch, it was really just in support or little details. Like they made the sculpture and I would just be like, well, maybe can I just like do that little bit or that. When it's really good writing, you're just so lucky. And that's how I felt with 13 Reasons. And again, we didn't know how it was going to be received, 13 Reasons Why. But I felt so proud and excited and to be a part of such an incredible project that we hoped would be a social contribution and start a conversation not only about suicide, but about sexual assault, about gender issues, about racism, about everything that's in the zeitgeist and in the culture at large now. That again, you can call it wrapped in candy or in great storytelling and characters and lighting and hair and makeup and special effects that make it that move you emotionally and to make it easier for someone to hear and understand than maybe they couldn't when it's just wrapped in politics or bipartisanship or all of the world of social media and too much information. So it's been an incredible journey. We just finished season 2, and even just hearing it, I get very emotional because it's a heavy show to make.
It is so heavy. I mean, sexual assault, bullying, it doesn't get heavier, basically. Sarah, maybe I'll ask you first because it's a broad question. What do you think is the responsibility, if any, of a creator when they are a storyteller, when they are putting these very difficult topics out to young audiences?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm interested to sort of hear how involved the writers and the actors get in this process too. But I've been thinking a lot about this, knowing I was coming here today, and things like perks of being a wallflower too. These Hollywood is so helpful in reaching people who might feel alone or isolated. And when you see your own struggles back on the big screen or small screen, it can really, I think, be a help. But the danger is glamorizing it, right? So it's such an interesting line. And I think things like 13 Reasons Why and Perks of Being a Wallflower, they're so careful. They're doing such an amazing balancing act on keeping the tone respectful without it becoming, soap opera-y or anything like that. I'm curious, is that a thing that you guys talk about on the show?
Yeah, I mean, it's so well considered, and there was a lot of controversy around 13 Reasons Why and showing the act of suicide. That was also very, very well considered and thought about, and it was a conscious decision in the spirit of not romanticizing it, of not having a beautiful girl with a great soundtrack and all these gorgeous kids and environment piecing out and making it look in any way romantic. The idea was to show just how horrific and horrible and the detriment that the detriment it brings to not just obviously Hannah Baker, but her whole community, family, and the rippling effects. And in season 2, you're going to see more of that. And then we delve more into the sexual assault, which all of us at a certain point this year, we were shooting with everything that was going on with the Me Too. We were like, are they reading our script? What's happening? And that's also a thing that there is almost like a collective unconscious thing that happens when you're telling great stories. It would happen in Shondaland all the time too, where we would be doing an episode on private practice or on Grey's, where then it would be up, and by the time we were airing it, it was in the culture happening. And there's always the concern, are they going to think we're copying it or we're just writing to that? But it doesn't really matter. It's, the only other thing I would love to say about that is that it was not only, I just want to emphasize that Brian and the other writers, some of whom had dealt with suicide, had been suicidal, it was very well considered. And in our culture still now, there's still this reticence to talk about suicide. Just like there's still a reticence to deal with sexual assault, even though it's all over the internet, even though there is this movement. And I had people come up to me. I had a woman in a lounge in San Francisco when I was finishing shooting last year hand me a note, and she was on her way back here, and she said, I'm so grateful that you did this show, because in my daughter's school, an all-girls school, private school in New York, they don't talk about mental health issues until their junior year, until they're 17. Right. And what I didn't know, even before I signed on to do 13 Reasons Why, is that the culture of bullying is so vast, so extensive, so intense, that it starts at such a young age, and that there will never be a perfect way to bring the conversation into the culture, but it has to happen, and it has to happen young.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Me Too, because I think just like what's happened in the last 6 months, really, shows like this that bring up these really hard to discuss topics that are pervasive and yet underground, suicide, and being only one, it gives people a language and a framework to talk about.
Right.
Just having the show give somebody something that they can coalesce around and begin that conversation. And this has been the case for, I think, other mental health challenges and conditions. We've chatted before about Homeland and how generally well people think the protagonist's condition is portrayed. Notice that I'm not using her name. But what I understand is that with something like Homeland, one of the successes of this is that her bipolar disorder is an aspect of the character. It's not the storyline, it's not the dominant line, it's really, it functions the way these things function in real life, which is to say, it's interwoven. You can never quite say what's personality and what's maybe the condition driving any one decision. Do you think that the most successful shows that deal in these hard issues take a subtler approach to mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of exactly what you guys both just brought up. For me, the way I think about with Me Too and mental illness and sexual assault, it's like the more light you can shine on something like this, the less scary and the less it's a taboo subject and nobody wants to talk about, like the better. And I think, I think there's a variety of ways to portray depression or mental illness or OCD. Homeland has been, she's a genius, and her illness is not defining her. It is, exactly. But I think that there's tons of room, and you would be able to speak to this better than me, is that there, and you do too, there's such a spectrum of different kinds of behaviors and illnesses that there's so much room from a storytelling perspective to tell these stories.
What conditions would you like to see covered more?
That's a good question. I mean, like I was sort of joking before, like, it's New York. We all have colds all the time. Like, that is such boring television. Does anybody want to watch anybody with a cold? With a cold.
A runny nose?
Yeah, like, oh, I'm just
I'd
a
like
little
to see
tired.
a 90-minute extended episode about a runny nose. It's cold and wet and I'm congested, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that is sort of the thing is with these shows, you don't.
There is there's the drama aspect to it as well. And that is also, again, the fine line of keeping it, listen, at the end of the day, too, 13 Reasons Why is also a mystery that is being solved, and it is that. So it is, there's so many needles to thread when telling these stories in terms of being careful, authentic, honest, sensitive. And we're in a culture of 800, everybody's got an opinion, so no one's going to think that the story is told exactly right. And that's also just something that you have to sort of accept as well. But I feel very, I don't need to sound corny or cheesy, but I feel very honored to be able to, it's super fun to be in Girls Trip and like be in a whack job, like to be a nutty character. But it's really incredible to be in something and to try to be of service to parents who have endured the unimaginable of losing a child to suicide, and to hold that and to give those people as well something that they're being mirrored back their experience in any small way is also it's great to play as an actor. It's really hard, but it's also like you feel like you want to do your best job to honor those people.
But ultimately, that's the most rewarding thing, it sounds like. Do you find there's a need to prepare differently when you're dealing with something like suicide? Did you prepare?
Yeah, I did. I mean, for me, it was a real education, the whole aspect of it, because I don't have children. I've had stepchildren, but I haven't dealt in the culture a lot with kids and bullying. And so when I heard, and I also, before I did the show, I was really like, okay, are we in this hypersensitive culture now where everyone's like being bullied, or is this a product of giving kids a trophy for 9th place? I mean, I really did have this sort of cynical attitude towards it. So I personally was educated when I went, and I understood and I saw and talked to parents and saw actually how quickly their lives are destroyed by a text or and if I were in high school now, I'd be destroyed. It'd be over. I mean, honestly, I was like a kid that was a clown, and I would do anything my friends dare me to. So there'd probably be some like inappropriate pictures of me, it was like whatever. It's just like, oh my gosh. And so I didn't understand until I got into it. And of course, preparing for the part of Olivia Baker, I talked to Dr. Sue is a prominent psychiatrist who deals with family health and particularly around suicide prevention and the aftermath at Stanford. I talked with her extensively, a couple of parents that had lost their child by suicide. had graciously given me their time to talk to me so I could do real in-depth and detailed character work and study.
And it comes through.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank
Well,
you.
I think we're out of time. Guess we can all agree, thank God we're not in high school anymore. This feels like a very fun high school reunion of sorts. Thank you, ladies, so much.
Thank you.
I learned so much about TV today.
Thanks.